So again, welcome to Healthy Eating on a Budget. Mary-Jo, would you like to introduce yourself to our group?
There we go. Hi, I'm Mary-Jo Sawyer. I'm one of the dietitians over on the VCU Health campus and work in the outpatient nutrition clinic. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mary-Jo. My name is Carolyn McCrea. I am the Director of Financial Wellness here at VCU. I work in the Virginia Credit Union sponsored Financial Success Center here at VCU, and my responsibility is to bring all things financial wellness to the VCU community. We are recording this webinar. We are monitoring the chat for any questions, and we will open it up to questions and allow people to unmute themselves once we get through our content portion. And so we're going to divide our presentation into two sections. I'll be talking a little bit about some of those financial aspects, some of our tips and tricks for making your healthy eating work for your budget. And then Mary-Jo will be going over the healthy eating portion of it, talking us through how to plan, how to cook, how to do some recipe building, some meal prepping, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a lot of good information you'll be able to take back and start using even as early as this week. So let's dive right into it. So first things first, we're going to talk about when we're thinking about healthy eating and we're thinking about how to make our meal prep and meal planning work for our budget. We're going to think about how much are we spending, what do we want to spend, and how do we calculate that out. So first things first, let's get our money focus on. So we're going to do what's called cash flow tracking. The first thing that we're always going to recommend whenever we're talking about making our budget work for us and working for trying to eat better or eat healthier or be more cognizant is to identify how much have you spent on food. If we look at the typical American household, we might think, oh, I've spent about $100 on food in the past month. However, what we have found is that if you're not actively tracking what you are spending, usually what you end up actually spending is a lot more than what you think you spent. You've probably gotten to the end of the month and gone, oh man, where did that money go? And it could be because you haven't tracked something or you forgot that you ordered takeout on that one night where you really couldn't cook. So the first thing that we recommend from a financial planning standpoint is to identify how much did you spend on food in the last month. This is going to be counting out what you spent on groceries, but also what you spent on takeout or going to a restaurant, getting delivery, figuring out what did you actually spend first and foremost. The next part, once you've identified how much you actually spent last month, is to figure out how much would you ideally spend this coming month. So we want to make sure that we are identifying, hey, maybe I spent 200. In reality, I'd like to spend 150. Or maybe you're thinking, I'd like to eat a little bit healthier. I'd like to spend a little bit more on groceries this month and a little bit less on takeout. So it's kind of figuring out, what is it that you ideally want to spend? And that gets us into our next piece, which is looking at making that budget, building that cash flow plan, and using what we call a 50-30-20 rule. Some of you may be familiar with 50-30-20. This basically says that of your take-home pay, you're spending 50% on things that you need, 30% on things that you want, and 20% goes to savings. That's an ideal scenario for any financial planner, any financial counselor. This is a great ratio to use when you're trying to save some money. So when we're thinking about 50-30-20 in the place of budgeting for food, 50% would go towards groceries, right? Things that we need. And 30% would go towards things that we want. So the day when we're just too tired to cook and we're like, yep, we're going to order pizza, or we're going to splurge a little bit and get, fancy salads or something like that. So we want to make sure that we're identifying what do we need to spend? So that's groceries. And then what do we want to spend? And that's going to be your takeout, your restaurants, your fast food. Do we have any questions so far, Dorian?
Yes. Can you just repeat what the 50-30-20 rule is?
Yes, I sure can. Great question. So 50-30-20 that's a standard ratio that we use in financial planning. That is when you look at your take-home pay. So say you're bringing, $1,000 home a month. 50-30-20 would mean that 50% is going towards things that you need, things that you have to spend. Roof over your head, utilities, grocery store, gas for the car, that type of thing. 30% is going towards things that you want. So that could be going out to dinner, that could be going to see a movie, that could be a cute new outfit, whatever that is. 20% goes towards savings. So when we're thinking about it in a place of healthy eating and building our budget for food, groceries falls into that 50% category, and then dining out or takeout or delivery or fast food or your Starbucks run, your daily Starbucks run, that goes into that 30% category. So we're wanting to focus our energy and focus our dollars on the groceries because that's going to help us be healthier from a financial standpoint and usually from a physical health standpoint as well. And Mary-Jo is going to talk a little bit more about that moving forward. Great question. All right, so we've got our budget, we have our cash flow model built out, and now we're getting ready to go to the grocery store. So I know it's a lot of preparation. Eventually you'll just get it down where it'll be really snappy, but these are kind of our building blocks for how do we attack the grocery store with success when we're wanting to be healthy fiscally and physically. Ooh, fiscal and physical, that's fun. All right. So first things first is we are going to pick our grocery store. For some of us, that means that we are a Kroger loyalist, a Publix loyalist because of their subs. We are, going to Wegmans or Food Lion because it's, what we grew up with. So we pick our grocery store first and foremost. For some of us, it's going to be a discount store like an Aldi, a Lidl, Trader Joe's, for example. The reason that we're wanting to keep that same store is because if it's a discount store, they don't necessarily offer like coupons, but you kind of know how to navigate and how to shop it to get the best deals. If it's a Target or a Walmart or a Food Lion, then you can get, a loyalty app or a discount app or something like that. And you can kind of make the most bang for your buck because you'll get rewarded for continuously shopping at the same place. So this is a great way to be able to save a couple dollars here and there by using jumping in on that loyalty rewards. Like Kroger has discounts and they're automatically added when you type in your phone number or you scan your app. And they also do like gas rewards too. And a couple other grocery stores will do something similar. So we want to make sure that we're getting kind of bang for our buck by going to the same grocery store and having that be our base model to use. The next part is making a list, checking it twice, not just for holiday season anymore, but for our weekly grocery trips. The reason that we're going to be doing this is this kind of keeps us accountable and honest about what we actually need to buy when we go to the store. It helps us keep that budget in mind as far as how much we're wanting to spend, what we're actually doing, and it's requiring you to plan ahead, to think about what am I going to cook this week? What am I going to order this week? Like, let's keep me accountable. Let's keep me on track for what I want to do as far as my health is concerned and as far as my wallet is concerned. Making this list is also going to be really helpful because it makes sure that we know what we already have in our house. So we're checking our pantry, our fridge, and our freezer. So we're not buying something and spending money on something that we already have. Like the jar of pickled jalapenos that I got last week when I already had a jar of pickled jalapenos in my house. So now I've got fridge space and pantry space taken up, and I spent $2 on something that I already had in my house. We want to make sure we're avoiding that. And then lastly, that list is also going to help us to keep really honest about what we are throwing away. When we are trying to eat healthy, for me, I might go, man, I'm just going to increase like number of baby carrots that I eat, right? Because that's a healthy snack. I hate baby carrots. I hate them. I do. I'm sorry. So if I buy them and I bring them home, I might force myself to eat a couple, but I'm going to ultimately throw it away. So now I've spent money on something that I'm not going to use, and it's really wasteful. And so we just don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that we are kind of being honest with ourselves and holding ourselves accountable by using that list. Next stop before we go to the grocery store is to figure out what time we want to go. We're not going to shop hungry, right? First rule of going to the grocery store: if you go hungry, you end up with 3 boxes of Cheez-Its, and you've eaten an entire box of Cheez-Its on the way home, and now you're not hungry for the healthy dinner that you had planned This is me, right? That's what happens to me if I go shopping and I'm hungry. It's a box of cheese. It's just right down the hatch. So now I'm full of sodium. I'm full of cheese. I'm not hungry for the healthy dinner that I have planned. And I've spent money and bought something that I didn't necessarily need or want. We're also going to avoid shopping during super busy times. So that would be weekend afternoons, right? Saturdays and Sundays, really busy. And then right after work, right around dinner time, that can also be a really busy time during the weekdays. So we want to make sure that we're kind of avoiding those peak times. That allows us to have a really quick and streamlined grocery experience. We don't get frustrated and go, man, this has been just a really long time. I've been here for an hour. I've earned ice cream or something like that, right? So then we're spending money on something that maybe isn't as healthy because we think I need a treat because I had to deal with all of this. Friday nights, great time to go to the grocery store, super empty. So think about date night at your local Kroger, right? And then finally, a lot of us here, when we're talking about saving money at the grocery store, we think about coupons. Coupons in the real world are really only helpful if they are allowing you to save money on something that you were already going to buy. If you only need one of something and the coupon is buy two and get one 50% off, you haven't saved any money. You've spent 50% more than what you were originally planning to spend, right? And now you have to make sure that you have that pantry or that fridge or that freezer space to actually be able to store it. And it might go bad if it's perishable. So we want to make sure that we're using coupons only for things that we're actually planning on buying in the first place. We're not going to be doing extreme couponing. Most of us don't have underground bunkers where we can save 100 cans of tomato soup. And doing a lot of couponing can be really time consuming. So this is where that, having your grocery store picked out and being part of a loyalty program or shopping at a discount grocer is going to save you that money that coupons would have saved without having to go through a huge thought process beforehand. So that's what we're doing before the grocery store. Now, before we actually get to the grocery store, Dorian, any other questions that have come through?
Not that I can see, just a comment about how your story was funny with the Cheez-Its.
Great. I am a Cheez-It sucker. So Goldfish also, I don't think about cheesy, salty crackers. And this is why I brought Mary-Jo in to actually talk about the healthy foods, because that's just not my forte. Okay, great. If you do have any other questions, feel free to chat those in. And now we're getting to the grocery store. So what do we do so that we can spend less money while we're getting healthier foods? There's a misconception that eating healthy means more money, right? And that's not really the case. So let's talk about how we approach that. So first and foremost, when we are thinking about healthier foods, we are immediately going to think about like, oh, I'm going to increase my fruit and vegetable intake, right? I'm going to go to lean protein and lots of fruits and veggies. And Mary-Jo is going to talk a lot more about kind of that breakdown. But this is where we can look for budget-friendly finds that happen to be in those categories of lean protein, of leafy greens, of fruits and vegetables. And this is where the canned section and the frozen section are absolutely our friends, because here's where you can get some healthy fruits and vegetables, some healthy lean meats that are more shelf stable or freezer stable, right? And you can pull them out and you can use them for recipes just like you would from the fresh produce or the fresh meat and seafood section. So we definitely want to take a look at those because a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times items in the freezer in the canned section are going to be less expensive than in like the fancy, fish section at the back of the store with the, the guy like flinging stuff around and, cutting up some salmon for you. We're also going to look at buying whole foods and buying items in bulk. And we're not talking about like Whole Foods at the grocery store, talking about things like a giant block of cheddar cheese, right? So, or maybe a whole rotisserie chicken, something that actually comes in whole and is going to end up costing you a little bit less money. Block cheese, for example, less than shredded cheese usually. So that's where some of those things can be really helpful. Bulk items, if you have the storage space for it, usually you can get more for a less money per ounce. And so like, say you're a fan of almonds and you like snacking on them, you know, almonds can be pretty expensive, but they're decently shelf stable. So if you can get a larger bag for less per ounce than one of the small containers, that's going to save you money in the long run and can be really helpful for you and eating healthy and making sure that you've got some healthy snacks available. We're going to avoid the expensive aisles. So again, most of the time, the fresh meat, seafood, and produce are going to be more expensive than the frozen and canned. Some places where that isn't the case is, and this is why we want to know who our grocer is, some grocery stores will have like discount days on their fresh meat or their fresh seafood or over in the produce section. So might be a Monday, might be a Tuesday. So if you're familiar with your grocer and you know what days they're having like a buy two, get one free or something like that, that could be really helpful because fresh chicken breast, you can take that home, throw it in the freezer and use it for the next couple of weeks, right? So that can be a really great way to save some money as well, and might be a little bit less expensive than one of the big freezer bags of frozen chicken, just kind of depending. One of the things that I missed for budget-friendly finds was the store brands. And again, this is where, you know, there might be a store brand of Cheerios as opposed to the brand name Cheerios, and that can end up saving you some money as well. And again, knowing who your grocery store is and being familiar with them can make sure that you know exactly what store brands you like from that particular store. Finally, we're going to skip aisles that are not on our list. So if we don't have chips on the list, we're not going down the chip aisle, and then we won't get distracted by our favorite brand of potato chips and go, oh, well, I'll just get one. I'll just get one because it's not on our budget. It's not on our list. We don't necessarily need it, you know, because if I'm going to choose between chips or baby carrots, I'm going to snack on the chips every single time, right? So we'll skip aisles not on our list. And then the one-stop shopping piece. This is, again, picking that one grocer and having that be your main grocer so that you're not traveling all over the Richmond area, for example, trying to find the best deal on chicken breast. You've got your one grocery store and you go there and you stock up on all the items that you need because your time is just as valuable as your money. And if you're going to be spending a little bit more time cooking or meal prepping, you know, being able to get to the grocery store and get home is going to be really important to you as well. So we're not going to be traipsing and going to, you know, we're getting milk from here and chicken from here, and then, you know, black beans from this store. We're just going to get it all in one place and then be able to head home. It's going to save us time. It's going to save us frustration. And the less frustrated we are with this process, the more likely it is that we're going to stick with it. So that's where we've got our main couple tips for kind of saving money. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary-Jo, unless there are any questions before we start talking about the healthy food portion of our presentation. All right. Marvelous.
Sorry, I was muted. Carolyn, I have really enjoyed your talk. If anyone's seen my expressions, I mean, I could just remember so many times that I've had interesting experiences like with the Cheez-Its too. So I really appreciate your tips. So we're going to take a little turn now into the nutrition part. And I want you to just keep in mind that eating healthy can be tasty, and you can also eat less expensively sometimes that way. And I've been a dietitian a long time, and I've taught classes on how to eat healthy. And one thing I know is a lot of people are just really shy away from making a grocery list. And I know sometimes it feels like it's another thing you have to do. But in the long run, it can make it so much easier when you go to the store when you're trying to save money as well. And I also have people that will tell me, I don't know how to cook. And then again, there's some people that probably cook at the chef level. So I want you to have this website over there. That's the My Plate website, and that particular link will take you to a bunch of recipes. I mean, there are hundreds of them, and they're labeled as to skill level from beginning to someone more experienced. And they also have dollar signs that mark the expense of the specific recipe. And the ones that I noticed had the $4 signs indicating it was more expensive were some for the more expensive cuts of meats. So I encourage you to go there. And also because that's a nutrition website, they're going to point out just the importance of my plate. And if you can see, there are a lot of different food groups. And I think just going back to the basics and remember what we can do to get our good nutrition in. And I think just this is my thing as a dietitian, but if you can include 3 different food groups at a meal, that really takes care of a lot of your nutrition needs. So get past planning those menus. And I find it easier if you can start with your dinner plans, because those are the ones where we usually fall apart. We'll come home, well, or we walk down from our room to our kitchen to make dinner. We're just tired. And that's when we can really not be wise in our food choices. So we want to make it easy. And back when I was teaching classes at Stony Point years ago, I would teach them on Monday nights. And I would always make spaghetti because the family liked it. I had spaghetti sauce in the freezer. It was quick to prepare, quick to clean up, got to class. So that was no stress for that meal. And so think of ways you can make it easier on yourself. And again, you want to try to keep it healthy. And as Carolyn has discussed so far, you want to look at the specific ingredients you need. And, you know, I had to laugh when you said you got those extra jalapenos, because I've come home trying to put something in the refrigerator only to find I already had like pickle relish for my chicken salads. And I've got 2 jars. It's going to be a while before I've finished with those. So when you're making your list for the grocery store, just write down all the ingredients you need. But you definitely want to check your pantry and your freezer so you don't buy things unnecessarily. So let's go to the next slide. And so what I did is I came up with a sample menu for the week. And I used it more of as an example of some of the principles we would be talking about in this seminar. So you might not exactly eat this many meals from this specific recipe or menu list because of maybe the cost of some of the ingredients, but I wanted to show you how things could work together. So if we look at S is starting for Sunday, and you want to look at that. That's a recipe for lightened up, easy, meatless lasagna. Oh, and I wanted to let you know that after we are through with our presentation today, you will be emailed a copy of the recipes and the menus and some tips about how to work at the grocery store. So look for that after this is completed. Oh, I have a message. Everybody's gotten them already. So if you want, you could even pull that up and look at that while we're going along with the seminar. That's great. So for the first recipe, it was one you can prepare on the weekend and eat it once. And then, have leftovers the next day. So that's one day you don't even really have to think about it. And then the menus for Tuesday and Wednesday, I selected them because they were easy to make. And they were also using similar ingredients. And then we jump over to Thursday. You're going to have some leftovers from earlier in the week. So that's another night where you don't have to cook, you just pull something out. For Friday night, I thought, well, let me put in a seafood recipe or fish, and that's a really easy one, you microwave. And I was thinking, oh, well, there's a lot of things you could do for Saturday. There's bound to be some kind of leftovers. And if there aren't, then you could do something using meals that hopefully you've frozen and they're just waiting for you to pull out in the freezer. I love nights like that. I don't have to cook. And then, as Carolyn had mentioned, you want to plan things in your budget so you can save money or just meet your goals. And so that might be when you order takeout or you go splurge on a meal. So that just gives us an idea of how this is all hooked together. So let's go to the next slide and talk about some of the more specifics. So again, you want to plan for leftovers. And I chose to do a meatless lasagna because I know more people are trying to eat plant-based or just trying to cut out meat. This picture happens to be a recipe that does have meat in it here, but you could make the recipe your own by adding some lean ground beef or lean ground turkey breast and cooking that up and mixing that with the sauce and layering the ingredients. Or if you wanted to highlight it being a non-meat recipe, you could cut up some raw vegetables or either sauteing them and add them into the recipe as well. So you can make it your own. And I love recipes like this because they give you leftovers. And that makes me excited because I'm an empty nester now, and I'll still make large recipes like this so I don't have to cook every night. And if you're not a lasagna or pasta fan, there are other recipes that you can use as well that are in bulk, like all kinds of chili recipes. I've got some in my freezer right now that I might just have for dinner since it's kind of a dreary day. Chicken casseroles, or maybe a hearty soup. So that just makes it so much easier for you. And depending on how many you're feeding, you may want to just freeze leftovers in bulk for your family, just for a family meal. Or you can freeze individual portions for that next meal at night, or you could have it for lunch. So I love leftovers. Why don't we go to the next slide? So I'm going to talk about those two recipes that use the same ingredients, because that way you'll be less likely to waste some of the ingredients and you'll use them up before you go bad. Like the baby carrots that Carolyn was talking about, I try not to buy big bags of things if I know I'm going to let that bag of potatoes just rot and sprout. So I try to go with things that are on sale and that I won't let go bad. All right, let's move to the next slide. So this is a picture of the actual recipe, and this is pretty easy to throw together. You just need to make sure you have all the ingredients, and you can see the two ingredients that are highlighted. They're going to be also used in the next recipe as well. And some of these things you may already have on hand, but let's just talk about some of the specifics. Here's a good way you can save some money with the canned ingredients. So you could use the store brand black beans and corn. That can be big savings there. One thing you notice, it says drained and rinsed. That's because canned vegetables can be higher in sodium. And if you're concerned about that, if you drain and rinse them, that reduces the sodium by 40%. So that way you get some vegetables in and they're not high sodium. And then also things like brown rice, that freezes well after it's been cooked, or it can be good and tasty and safe in the refrigerator for like 3 or 4 days. And then we have the salsa. And if you look over here, that ingredient at the picture itself, you can see everything's on there. And I just kind of threw it all together, but some people like to put it together differently. But you can see the chicken peeking out from under the salsa. All right, let's go to the next slide. So you can see this is a barbecue chicken flatbread pizza, and we can see that the shredded chicken and the onions are on here. And I want to mention that the recipe for the shredded chicken is included on that PDF. And so it's really a great way to make a lot of that product. The recipe makes 10 cups of shredded chicken, and you've only used 4 cups in these 2 recipes. So you have some left over to make chicken tacos or chicken salad, or you can put them in individual 1-cup portions and put them in your freezer for the future. Now, I know that boneless, skinless chicken breasts can be expensive. There we go. I lost y'all for a second. And so I was thinking about what Carolyn says. And the grocery store I frequent a lot, they have boneless, skinless chicken breasts. And I think people are not buying them as much. They're marking them down $2. So that's one food that I will break my list for. If I see they have those chicken breasts I like on sale, I'll grab 2 packs and put in the freezer. And they seem not to have caught on that people aren't buying them as much. So I'm benefiting from that. Or when she mentioned the rotisserie chicken, you could certainly purchase one of those. It's already cooked, and then you could shred that and use it in your recipes as well. So there are always different ways to even save more money. And I just want to point out here on this recipe, we have a bottled barbecue sauce, and the chicken has been mixed with that. So that's a little bit different color. And then you can see it some on the top of the flat bread. All right, another thing with onions on the grocery list, you probably wouldn't want more than 2 red onions. If you buy a bag of those, they're likely to go bad unless you like them in a lot of other things. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, the recipes I've talked about so far, the first one had jarred spaghetti sauce, the next one had the salsa, and then we just talked about one that had the barbecue sauce. And all of those, unfortunately, can be high sodium ingredients. And so we can look at ways to reduce that. So let's look at the first salsa. And you can see that that salsa has 220 milligrams, and that's for a 2 tablespoon serving, which would be a usual serving. And let's look down for comparison at the salsa number 2. That's only 140 milligrams for the same 2 tablespoons. And you may not realize, but a food that has 140 milligrams of sodium per serving, that's actually considered a low sodium food. So let's look back at the salsa number 1. All right, the salsa that I wanted one day for a recipe, they were out of. I was in a hurry, and so I just picked up a leading name brand next to it because I needed it. And unfortunately, my recipe called for a whole jar of salsa. And I learned from my mistake, because that particular salsa I bought in a hurry without reading the label had 240 milligrams, which is even higher. And you might think, well, that doesn't make that much difference. In that recipe, it did. Because I had to use the whole jar, it was really salty, and that was wasted money. So always double check some things like that. Looking down at the bottom one on the salsa, you can see that the sodium is only 40 milligrams. And you might be thinking, is that a typo? It's like, no, this is a brand of salsa, and I'm going to tell you the brand. It's called Frog Ranch. It's got a cute label with a frog on it, and he looks like he's on a ranch. And this is an especially tasty salsa. You might be thinking, oh, it's not going to have any flavor. There's not much salt in it. But it is really flavorful, especially from the ingredients they use. And I think I have a lot of people that may have heart disease that I'm working with, or kidney disease, and they really have to be strict on their sodium. So this third one is a great option for someone who really has to follow a low sodium diet. I see a question popped up. Honestly, I have not had it recently. I do not remember it being much more expensive. It was about the same price. And I do know I have seen it and bought it at Kroger before, but an online search showed that it was also at Walmart, Target, and different Sam's in the area. So you should always call before you go to a specific store, because you never know, that particular location may not cover or carry that product. And that's one thing I've noticed too from shopping at different grocery stores. a lot of them kind of cater to the neighborhood that shops there. And that can give you an idea of if your store doesn't carry a certain product, you might ask them to carry it. I remember years ago, and everybody getting the price on the Walmart frog ranch salsa. Okay. All right. So years ago, when I used to lead some grocery store tours at UCrops, you guys remember UCrops? I was talking to the class about using the ground turkey breast and looking at the different packages, because sometimes ground turkey is not ground turkey breast. It may be ground turkey that also has the dark meat in it and also chicken skin. And so that's going to be higher fat and high in cholesterol for someone who may be trying to reduce their fat intake and cholesterol. And I had gone to another UCrops in a different part of town, not far from my house, and they never had the lean ground turkey breast. And so I asked the man in that area, I said, why don't you carry this? This is a really good product. And he said, whenever we got it, we could never sell it. So if you can't find something at one store, you may want to check at a different store. And I totally agree with what Carolyn was saying, is find a store and call it your own. And that can save a lot of time and a lot of energy, and especially a lot of gas. And it's important to know your store. And that made me think of one time when my then teenager had tagged along with me to go to a grocery store nearby. And I didn't have a lot of time, and I didn't want to go to the typical Walmart that we were using at that time. And he was just saying, well, Mom, why don't you just shop here all the time? It's close and it's just really easy. And I said, because the aisle we just went up, I've already spent $5 more here than I would have at Walmart for these items, but we're in a hurry. So it's good to be aware of things like that. Fortunately, my husband has started going to the grocery store some as well. And when he would come back, I would ask him, how much did you pay for that? And he went, I don't know. I got the product that we had on the list. And of course, I'm horrified. And, but lately he has started learning to check for the store brands and also to check for prices. And we were out of something he wanted, and it was just easier for me to pick it up at a different store. And he actually fussed at me and he said, why did you buy that at such and such store? It's cheaper at Walmart. So those are just some examples of knowing your store. And I think too, when you were talking about the coupons that buy two, get one free, that just drives me absolutely nuts, because I don't want them telling me how much I have to spend to save money when we ultimately know that we're going to come out spending more money that we may not have wanted. Now, if it's a product that you really use and you really like, that might be worth it in the long run. So let's see. Oh, somebody share. Oh, that's great. I know it's that taking that little extra step. And I think too, when I was growing up, I worked in my father's drugstore, and we had to mark the price on everything. So when you got to checkout and when you got home, the price was on the item. And so I was always kind of hesitant about the barcodes because people didn't know what they were spending. And so I encourage you to look at your receipt. And also, I think that's a nice reward when you go to somewhere where you have a loyalty card, and you can look at the bottom and see how much money you have saved on that trip. Let's go on to my next slide. And I just want to summarize with some quick meals. And at the bottom of this slide, you'll see the recipe for Friday night's meal. And it's the microwave dill vegetables with fish. And so that's actually a really quick meal, but I want to direct your attention to the meal at the top, the sauteed chicken breast or the baked chicken thighs. That was always my emergency meal when the kids were involved with sports or we just didn't have a lot of time. I would always have chicken in the freezer. And then, oh, look, there's barbecue sauce. So you can put barbecue sauce, teriyaki sauce. Again, those are higher sodium, so you can get lower sodium versions. Or you can even saute them in like the light or just the Italian salad dressing. So those are things you would probably already have on hand. Hopefully you would have some frozen vegetables or salad ingredients, and then put some kind of quick carbohydrate with it, like brown rice or quinoa. You can get those in the instant forms. And I'll own up to it, I do not cook rice very well. It's either gummy or just not good. So perfect rice, instant rice for me all the time. And then another option would be actually have a hamburger meal. And you could do like the lean ground beef. And I will tell you, if you buy the lean ground beef that's already made into little patties, that's going to be more expensive by at least $1 than if you get the beef in a tube. And it took me a while to get my husband to use that because he always said that reminded him of sausage for some reason. But anyway, you can save money by doing that. And also if the store I shop in, I love the taste of their lean ground beef. So that's one option. You could also have veggie burgers if that's what you prefer, and you could get those frozen to have on hand. You can eat them with or without buns. And then, oh, look, baked sweet potato fries. I just want you to be aware that they're not that much more healthy than the average fries, especially even if you bake them, but they're a little bit higher in vitamin A, and that just gives you a little bit of a difference in the typical regular fries. And then don't stop there, throw those frozen vegetables in as well. And so that's just my thought process, not only as a dietitian, but my mom was a really good cook, and she always planned a balanced meal. Also, true confession here, I was a picky eater growing up. Poor mom, but now I eat about anything. So what I want to leave you with is on the next slide, is how you can make a quick meal, how you can make it very healthy and easy. So my success equation for a healthy dinner is down at the bottom. You want to have some protein. And so if you look at the items in red, you'll see the protein. So it's the chicken breast, it's either the hamburgers or the veggie burgers, and then also the fish. And veggies, I am a veggie pusher because they are so easy. And a lot of us like vegetables, but we just don't take the time to eat them. And eat the ones you like. Yeah, so Carolyn, don't buy those baby carrots if you don't like them. Send them to me. I love baby carrots. All right, so make sure you are thinking what stuff that you will eat. And I just kind of lump the other as carbs if you are eating carbs. I know not everybody does, but some type of grain if you do. And again, I just had brown rice or quinoa because those are easier to have on hand. You know, the sweet potato fries would be that. And then also fruit. You can use that as something to go along with meals. For example, if you did the chicken power bowl recipe, you got a lot of vegetables in there. You don't need any more. So, you know, you could have a fruit with that. So I would just encourage you to start planning your meals and you will never realize how much easier it makes your life, and it really actually takes a lot of stress off. So I'm going to turn this back to Carolyn and let her continue.
Right. Thank you so much, Mary-Jo. That was awesome. I have learned a lot today with that. I think is going to help with my meal prep. For those of you who are looking at kind of what we have talked about today, and you're thinking, I'm already doing some of those, and I really need some bigger changes, something to help with, making sure that I'm in control of my spending when it comes to eating healthier, making sure that I'm staying on task with, focusing on getting some of those healthier foods. We have our last 3 tips for bigger changes if you're really needing that extra push to get you in the right direction. So the first, and this has kind of really come around because of the last year and the environment in which we have been living and working and not really playing so much over the past 12 months, is if you are having a tough time with sticking to a list or sticking to a budget when you physically go to a store, look and see if there's some online ordering options. Quite a few grocery stores will have incentives for you to start using online ordering where you can do curbside pickup. You might be able to have it be delivered to you as well if time is of the essence for you. But this can make sure that you are really sticking to that list and you're not getting distracted by some of those delicious, expensive, and not so healthy treats that the grocery store might be trying to tempt you with, particularly at the checkout aisle, right? Like there's always the Reese's cups. They call to me every time I go through the checkout aisle. So we want to make sure that we're, looking at, hey, if I'm having trouble sticking to my list, maybe I do online checkout instead. There's also, if you are still wanting to go to the store, maybe not necessarily, pay the membership cost or the delivery fee for doing online ordering, but you're having a tough time with kind of sticking to your budget. We definitely recommend looking at a cash budget and using an envelope system. And this can be applied to your entire life if you're really looking at making some fiscal changes. I have used a cash budget because I wanted to make sure that I use something that I could then recommend to others. And this is basically switching over for things that you're wanting to spend or needing to spend using actual physical cash and going, I have X amount, I have $100 available for groceries this month, and I'm putting it in an envelope and I'm labeling it groceries, and that's what I have available. Or I'm taking $50 and I'm putting that in an envelope that says this is available for takeout and delivery orders. And when the $50 is gone, I don't get to get takeout anymore. I don't get to get delivery anymore. So using that and really kind of restricting that if you're having some trouble with kind of sticking to your food budget. And this could work too for, entertainment or, when we're actually able to get back out there again. But a cash budget and envelope system can be really helpful if you're really looking at making some serious cutbacks to what you're spending each month. And then also thinking ahead to, that you want to do takeout, you want to go to a fancy restaurant when we can go to restaurants again, you want to get something really delicious delivered, or maybe that one day at work is going to be really hard because you're going to be sitting on, Zoom webinars for 8 hours. You're just going to be exhausted. You don't want to cook. Identify that ahead of time and pick the days, identify the days that, hey, that's going to be my takeout splurge, so that you can plan ahead, you can budget ahead, and then you can make sure that you're kind of sticking with your health goals and you're sticking with your financial goals as well. So those are our big 3 for if you're looking at making some even bigger changes outside of what we've already talked about with kind of the weekly meal planning, recipe, making the list for the grocery store, and all of those other tips and tricks that Mary-Jo has shared with us today. So that's what we had planned for you also. At this point, I'm going to allow for folks to unmute. So you're welcome to chat questions in, or if you've got a question and you'd like to chat with me and Mary-Jo for a few more minutes. It looks like we've got about 10 more minutes for today. And then also wanted to make sure that all of you had our contact information. If there is something that we can be helpful with, or you'd like to talk more about your cash flow system, you'd like to talk more about your dietary needs, you've got our contact information here, and we'd be happy to be resources for you in the future. And just want to say thank you for joining us today, but we'll turn it over to any questions that we have at this point.
I see a
Yeah,
question that popped up with basically dealing with a family member who doesn't want to eat healthy and or having maybe kids that are more picky eaters. And that is really tough. That's really tough. And so with an adult, that's their choice. And it's hard sometimes to get them to make changes. With kids, you can have a little more control. And a lot of times people will say, well, I don't want to cook double. And sometimes that actually may be the better way to go. For example, if vegetables are a big one, my kids thought I loved broccoli because I would cook a whole bag of it, just the regular size, and I would eat it for the next couple of meals until they were gone, because I was the only one of four that liked vegetables. All but one of them like vegetables now, so you do what you can. And that's where planning can come in. If you know a person's not going to like, X food, well, fix something that the rest of you all will like, and they can have X food. So I think that's kind of a general answer to something that really needs to be more specific. So if people do have questions, the best way to reach me is through email, and I will be happy to talk with you.
Yeah, that was a great question. I can say that I'm the picky eater in my household. So I'm the one who does the meal prep. I'm the one who kind of plans what my grocery list is, and my husband does the grocery shopping. So we kind of divide and conquer that way too. So that might be a way to kind of identify some places where you could bring some healthier foods in while still kind of going, oh, I've got a picky eater. Oh, I have someone who doesn't want to eat quite as healthy, maybe in the middle a little bit. Mary-Jo, we have a question about that, if we ask about, hey, I want to eat veggies, the answer is always no. But then if we put veggies on the plate, they get eaten. I found I trick myself into eating veggies too. I'll make rice and I'll make cauliflower rice and I'll stir them together. And so then I have a little bit of the regular rice and a little bit of the cauliflower. And now I've got a vegetable that's kind of going along with that too. But do you have any other ideas for how to get more veggies on the plate?
Well, especially if you're dealing with children. I mean, my kids were as picky as I was, and there have been some studies that have shown that it may be related to the strong flavor of vegetables, that kids just are not ready, or their taste buds aren't ready for something like that. So I would try to find ones that might be less offensive. Like, I wouldn't start with Brussels sprouts because they're really strong flavor. All right, and someone else has typed something that they've changed the texture of something, and I think that's really important, like grating the carrots for a salad rather than leaving them in chunks. And so people may be more likely to try those. So I would start with where they're willing and move forward from that. I know green beans are a lot less intimidating than maybe broccoli, or of course, my son, who was picky, he still hates green beans, but oh my goodness, he is a cook now and at home for his wife, and he makes some things that I'm just shocked for, like he ate zucchini. So I think there's changing the texture, going with something that's not so strong. And especially if they will eat it when you put them on the plate. It's not like you're forcing them to. It's like it's there and it's an option. So win-win all around if they'll eat it like that.
It looks like we have answered the questions that have come through. Again, you've got our contact information on here, and we just appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today. If there's anything we can help with in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself and Mary-Jo. We did get a question earlier, and this has been recorded. So if you would like the recording, you can reach out to Cindy Fairs, who sent out the handout as well, and she will make sure to get that recording over to you. But thank you all so much for joining. It was such a treat to be here today, and we'll see you all next time.